Steve Potter of Puppet by Performance. It's great to talk to you. Thanks for your time today. What are the challenges that you're seeing organizations run into in the federal government as they're adopting DevSecOps practices and building out the environments that they'll use to deliver DevSecOps solutions? Welcome.
What I've seen over my 30 plus year career is that the shift of infrastructure decisions to developers has in some cases widened the rift between the operators that need to maintain security and compliance as part of their infrastructure besides the app. DevSecOps has been amazing for shifting security and vulnerability scans left, as everyone knows. But that power has also shifted to the developer where their decisions have an impact on the overall security posture sometimes of the underlying infrastructure. And while the developers want to move fast with their applications, they need a system that will also keep them on guardrails when it comes to the underlying infrastructure, whether it be a straight operating system or a middle layer in the operating system like Kubernetes or a container. This is where technology like Puppet fits in, as any misconfiguration on that underlying layer can be mitigated 48 times a day and keep developers in the lane that they should be in, which is creating the application. So, for instance, as part of a CI/CD process, now that you're dealing with containers and Kubernetes types of systems or straight up virtual machines, is that there could be some configuration that exposes the system to a weakness. Applying a CI/CD and software development lifecycle process to the infrastructure as well, which is where Puppet is the number one choice, allows the same sort of review and scrutiny when it comes to infrastructure changes as it does to application changes. And making sure that you have a system that has local processing to fix any misconfiguration at least 48 times a day, I think is an equal partner in this adaptation to DevSecOps processes.
How much of the challenges that you've seen agencies run up against are technology based or infrastructure based, and how much of them are maybe culturally based, just changing the way that organizations do business and what their expectations are from their teams and from the software that those teams develop?
We always talk in terms of people, process, and technology. And when you have one organization essentially making all the decisions as the shift left has happened, that causes this imbalance. And I think it increases friction. When it comes to designing the next platform, there needs to be people, process, and technology involved in those conversations so that everybody comes to the table and everyone has the same expectations. We've always heard terms like shadow IT, where the developer goes around the people in the process because they want to move fast. Well, fast isn't the only metric that you should be measuring yourself by these days. Security is number one. Everything else is, I would say, gravy.
You talked about that shift to the left. Is this a shift that is going to continue and continue and continue, and we're going to keep moving left and left and left? Or as agencies become more used to using DevSecOps practices and their DevSecOps environments become more mature, that they'll settle into kind of an endpoint and it will take some other point of movement at some future date for that shift to continue?
Well, I think it depends on the application. There's still an awful lot of monolithic applications out there that are running in data centers that may be using older technologies to run, but they're still very important, as well as the data that resides within them. I think the shift left will happen on newer applications, or it'll happen more on newer applications where you have streamlined CI/CD processes into higher velocity development rates. But when it comes to the monolithic applications that are still a majority of where the data resides and really any enterprise or governmental agency that is out there, the trend will accelerate to a point, but the natural release cycles won't be accelerated that much because of the nature of the application.
The monolithic applications that you talked about are so important because they're some of the most core applications to the services that governments provide, and the federal government in particular. What does that development cycle look like over time, especially given what you said, which is very true? You can't just, for example, take off the master social security application that sends the payments out every month for X period of time and modernize it. These things will have to happen at the same time. I guess they could keep going, but I keep hearing they all have life cycles and that they will all fail at some point in time if modernization, if transformation doesn't happen. So what's your sense of what that looks like over time, Steve?
I think it depends on the roadmap of the specific agency and the specific application. And if it needs to move, typically what I've seen is that you start on the edge with the user experience. Like now the new trend is going to be AI agents, to interact with the consumer, or internally an AI agent for folks in the customer service or help desk to ask questions of the secured data that they have. And as needed, you will refactor the larger monolithic applications into microservices or some other replatforming that we maybe haven't even thought of yet.
You said that depends on the roadmaps that agencies have. What's included in a successful roadmap for an effort like you just described?
What's included in the successful roadmap, one is to be able to maintain what you already have. And what I mean by that is if you're going to go through an operating system modernization process, which is an inevitability for any monolithic application, that's the point, I believe, that is a inflection point where you can think about what parts of the application can be peeled off into a higher velocity development cycle. To change just for change's sake or because there's some new hype cycle, I don't think the investment is worth the payoff.
You hit on what I wanted to finish on, Steve, and that is, and you framed it really eloquently. How does one discern the technology cycle and the development cycle from the hype cycle when it comes to not just the big concepts like DevSecOps or not, but the individual developments and evolutions within, for example, DevSecOps?
Well, Gartner has their hype cycle report that everyone should read for sure. The natural curiosity of humans, getting back to the people side of things, wants us to use the latest and greatest. It wants us to be, the shiny kid on the block and having a cool factor. But it really comes down to the process as well when making these decisions, right? So if putting all of your data into a large language model reduces your metrics when it comes to security or applicability to the folks that you're dealing with, then is that the right decision to do now? Should you be an early adopter, or in the case of agencies and governments, should you be maybe a straggler and wait until the hype cycle has matured and the technology has matured?
Steve, it's great to talk to you. I really appreciate the conversation today. Thank you.
Thank you.